All right, guys, I have an awesome one here today. You've got to watch this. We're talking about Indian fatigue, and this young lady here, who's Indian, obviously, in Canada, she's discussing it from her perspective. She wants to have a conversation about it, a nice, honest, reasonable one. So let's do it. I'm not going to slam her in a negative way. I like her in a lot of ways. She seems really nice. There's some things I agree with, some things I disagree with. But as a Canadian for generations who's been born here, I want to talk about this. I think it's very important for people to understand, both Canadians and people who, want to become Canadians, whatever. It's a very important conversation. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So let's listen to what she has to say. I'll pause it here and there.
Video. I want to say all Indians are not same.
Fact is that they're all Indians.
Stop being racist.
Why did they all get jobs, and why they?
We are very hardworking, and when people say
Just a quick stop. Now, I never agree with like that type of lady who's screaming at, brown people in the parking lot. That's not Canadian behavior. Most people don't do that. So I condemn that. I hate it. It's ugly. I don't like it. So far I'm in agreement. We've seen her around whatever. So I'm not I don't like that.
that they're not getting job, we are not the reason. The reason behind of them not getting a job is something else. But because of few people, let's take a handful of brown folks who did not take things seriously, and that's where things starts. And people get an excuse to blame all Indian. The truth is, most of us come here, hustle hard, and prove ourselves. Before we jump to the incidents, let's be clear. We are contributing in Canada GDP like crazy, and that too in every field. और अगर numbers के हिसाब से देखें,
Well, hang on. Before you just say that, some are, but did you know that since Trudeau came into power, our GDP per capita, that means per person, has gone down? Is this entirely the fault of people from India? No, but there are a lot of students who then claim asylum and get a bunch of benefits. And well, I'll get to this in a second, but the idea that you're contributing to the GDP, be careful about that before saying that.
so Indian immigrants contribute billions of dollars every year into Canada's GDP. And before you guys start commenting, I'm not ignoring the fact of other immigrants' contribution. Us, as an India, we are mostly students, entrepreneur, professionals. We work, we pay taxes. So अगर Indians का number ज़्यादा है, तो contribution भी ज़्यादा ही होगा. सोचो, इंटरनेशनल स्टूडेंट जो आते हैं, जो लोकल की फीस के 3 से 4 गुना होती है. Then people are paying taxes, grocery, rent, and everything. That all contributes to Canada's GDP.
It does, but if you don't pay enough per person, then that lowers it. Also, if you're not earning enough and paying enough taxes, then going to school, going to the doctors, and all this kind of stuff makes it, more expensive, and it's lower per person, per capita, and that's the most important thing there. And then, yes, if you're buying, paying for rent, paying for groceries, going to the movies, whatever, all this stuff does increase GDP. But it's very important to note that if anybody, like if you claim asylum, get benefits, those free handout money from the government, that even though it's all our tax dollars paying, it goes back into the economy, increases inflation. And yeah, that does actually increase the number of the GDP, not per person, but if you take government money, like let's say a homeless person, forget Indians, gets government money. Okay. They get $1,000 and they go buy a bunch of lottery tickets, cigarettes, and beer. Okay. That contributes to the GDP, but that's clearly not a good thing. So anyway, that needs to be pointed out just in general. This is not blaming Indians, but she's just not talking about that.
Now the question is, अगर हम contribute कर रहे हैं, तो फिर ये hateism और ये Indian fatigue क्यों? Like why people are hating Indians? What is this Indian fatigue? I'm going to share 2 of my personal incident that happened. एक बारी मैं बाइक चला रही थी and there was a guy in car. वो फोन पे बात कर रहा था. I actioned that guy, but bro didn't give a shit about it. He probably didn't even know that I was also Indian inside the helmet. But अगल बगल के और area, this is what is written. Okay, no garbage is to be left on the ground. Please use disposal chute. Right? People used to just throw everything over here, and somebody has just written, neighbors, please throw your trash in the chute or in the container area. Don't be dirty. That's what I'm telling. Like, just look at it. That's the chute, and that's where the garbage is. And then they'll say, oh, why they don't like us. because they can see all that masala curry. Maybe these curry masalas are not all Indians. They might be brown, but for other people, all brown equals to Indians. So we get all the blames. एक बंदा गलत करता है and पूरी community पे आता है. Now let's see all these viral videos.
These are good ones. You got to watch what she shows here. It's unbelievable.
पूरी community पे questions उठते हैं.
Look at that. Guys, like bare feet up on the bus like that comfortably. That is not the point system of immigration. Okay. This guy did not pass a high level of points. Like we used to have that. This is not a sophisticated way of doing things at all. Unbelievable. I've seen this a lot. Now, a lot of people might say, oh, well, what's a big deal? Taking up a parking space and having, like at tourist attractions, places like that, big parking lots, right? I have seen this so much. A big family, grandmas, kids, in-laws, having a great time in the parking lot eating food. Now that's just not like, what can I say about it? Even if they clean up the mess. Well, A, you took up a parking spot, but B, it's just weird. Now, before I go, you blame me and say, oh, you're, being mean to other cultures. Well, I've told you in other videos, I lived in China for almost 15 years. People didn't accept the way I would hand a business card because Westerners hand it with one hand to the other person. And, Chinese have this way of holding it with two hands. You hand it over and they say that's just how to do it to be polite. Otherwise, you're rude. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough. If that's how you do it, I'll do it that way. And I started doing it that way. So you have to just tell people, like, guys, go to another spot. This is not where we eat. Okay. Just, it isn't. And it's good to learn. I learned things in other cultures. Don't eat in the parking lot.
Well, police are trying to identify a suspect in a sexual assault case on the TTC in Etobicoke.
This is bad.
And what is he essentially saying in the video? He said, send him 6 months of bank statements, and he has people inside the BDC to get approvals.
Is that person still there? He's saying get $300,000 on a scam because he knows people who work inside the bank. Like, imagine a Canadian working in the Bank of China and making a video about this scam because they know other Canadians working there, so they'll give you, more than $250,000. Like, yeah, good luck to that person. I mean, you can't even imagine it, honestly.
Like we as an Indian talking about गंगा नदी को क्लीन करने के लिए, and यही नहीं, एक इंडियन बंदे ने फ्लेक्स करने के लिए एक वीडियो डाली how to get free food from food bank.
Now, Canadian culture, American Western, getting free food in a food bank, this is like the lowest of the low. This is just what we learn culturally. Like, I remember as a kid, nobody did that unless they needed it. It was sort of embarrassing. We had to say, no, you got it. Like, it used to be the other way, where if you needed to get food, people would be so humiliated to go that a lot of people wouldn't go. Okay, so they're like almost starving, and the neighbors are saying, like, go get something. Here's your help. And they'd be like, no, I'm too proud. I don't want to get it. I don't want to look needy. Okay, that's how it used to be. So anybody promoting, like, hey, you get free food, what's the big deal? That is a very slippery slope. Okay, nobody should have this attitude, or else then we have to just watch everybody. And like, you really need a culture that says, yeah, we'll help you out if you need it, but if you don't even try it, or else everybody's going to be policing it and make bad, very bad.
Seriously, that food bank is for the needy people, not to abuse the system. If you can afford an iPhone, you can afford the food. Why the fuck are you using food bank and abusing the system? And एक मैडम ने तो next level ही पार कर दिया. She's showing how to get expensive apple in a cheap price by replacing the tag. Like, थोड़ी इज्जत तो बची रहने दो. And obviously, how can you forget that Halloween auntie जो सारे घर में जाके बच्चों की कैंडीज उठा रही थी.
This is a good one coming up. Watch this. I have a lot to say.
And उसके साथ साथ डेकोरेशन के स्टफ भी उठा लिया. Now, I'm going to share one more video along with this Halloween auntie. But before I share that, I want to say that I have no feelings of hurting anyone. This is just a video to show how perception works. And you guys comment and let me know what exactly happened in this video.
Okay, so looks like a white lady. She looks kind of Eastern European to me, but anyway, that doesn't even matter. Let's just say she's a Canadian named Sue. Okay, she grew up here and native English and the whole thing, and she's stealing candy. Now she's asking, and she's being legitimate, so I'm going to answer it. Why didn't this video go viral? Right? There was an Indian lady who stole Halloween candy. She went viral. Why didn't this lady? That seems fair, right? Okay. Now, obviously, this is ridiculous, right? I'm just gonna watch the rest of the clip. Like, look at her. Look at her.
And before we
Now, okay. Now, just gonna go back to that. So she looks like borderline homeless, okay?
and
And she looks like obviously depressed and something's gone wrong with her life. Now, if we had an immigration, like let's say that person went to another country and they tried to immigrate there based on a point system, which we used to have. Like she's not a doctor, she's not a lawyer, she's not somebody who could afford a ticket to get to another country and start like be a high level expat over there. So, like, yes, Canada, every single country has the lowest level, like our own low end, because you're always going to get that, right? You're always going to have like the bottom few percent of people by definition. But the point is, they don't get accepted anywhere else. So if that's your bar, like if somebody comes as an immigrant, presumably we allowed them in because we thought that would be good for us. Like, oh, you have good education, you have this and that, and then they come here and steal Halloween candy. It's like, oh, wait, who did we let in? But if let's say that person was born here, the other one, it's like, yeah, well, that's one of our absolute worst people, right? Like we have a very low end. So don't compare yourself to that. Like when I moved to China, every single Westerner basically was like, the amount of money they earned per person was very high. They dressed well, they traveled around the world, they spoke multiple languages. This is in general. And they were not criminals, they didn't cause any crime, didn't cause any chaos, and they were like, everybody thought they were a benefit. And that's just how it works in expat communities, more or less. Okay, you don't get this like some weird guy, like some weird homeless person from Canada who's stealing stuff in China. They wouldn't even get there in the first place. So we're saying if we're bringing someone in and they're doing that, it's much worse than to have like, our bottom 1% or 0.1% of people doing something here. Yeah, she's ridiculous. But we don't want to let people like the equivalent of that, we don't want coming in.
before we end this viral hone ki kahani, everybody remembers that Wasaga beach incident. And recently,
Yeah, the
I
pooping
think
on the beach.
those were couple, I think 4 people or 3 people, जो साबुन लेके मस्त नदी में नहा रहे हैं.
Another culture thing. Look at this. So like Indians bathing with soap, that's the key in the lake. And like I learned that as a Canadian, mainly from I think from my grandma. My parents have a cottage, like third generation cottage. And if somebody was like gonna use like she would see at the lake, okay, she would see like one little soap bubble and start freaking out. And this is before there was mass immigration at all. I'm talking about like early 80s. And nobody up there was from anywhere else other than like multi-generation. If anybody put any dot of soap in the lake, people would just like culturally freak out, like, oh, you're ruining the lake. And they make such a big deal about it. That is the culture we grew up with. So to see like young people like this just soaping up, yeah, it makes people freak because we don't want that. Okay. Like anybody, it's just so weird to see. And I have like one last thing that I have to show. Oh, yeah. I'll show actually a couple last things. There's too many good ones in here.
Should I drive the
Unless
plane?
and until we do not close the tray table, we won't be able to take off, ma'am.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Firstly, do you know what brand it is? Do you
Ma'am,
know
I'm
what
sorry, I'm not
what
aware
bag
about
it is? Do you know it is very precious?
Dude, buying MK and Coach doesn't give you sense. So have some manners and have some civic sense and respect the community. And one incident that happened face to face with me last year,
Like I'm agreeing with a lot. Like she's calling this out at least. So I'm agreeing with like she's calling out the bad behavior. I'll point out this white lady again, who again, I agree with her. I don't like this. And then there's one last thing I have to show
there was
you.
a guy, he was born and brought him in Canada.
Your grandma is not Canadian.
So what wrong did I do to you? I'm just trying to understand, like, what wrong did I do to you? Personally,
What wrong did I do to you?
You hardly speak English.
Je parle le français. I speak English as well. I speak French. Est-ce que vous parlez français? Do you speak French?
I do. I speak
On peut
French.
parler en français. Venez, on peut discuter en français si vous voulez. Je suis Canadien. I'm Canadian.
And she was not indigenous.
Okay, so check this out. Again, that white lady, I don't agree with her at all, but like you don't want to compare yourself to that level of Canadian, right? Anybody that like, yeah, that's our lowest end and it's bad and we need to change or we need to try to get rid of it. But like, how do you get rid of every single bad behavior? Like if I went to India and filmed the worst things that I saw and said, like, look at how you live, that's unbelievable. I'd get an unbelievable amount of footage, right? But the people coming in, we control immigration, and we're saying, wait a second, that's not who we want to come in, right? So you don't want that white lady in India or China, wherever. I get it. Don't bring her. She wouldn't pass any test to immigrate there, and it's hard to even immigrate. Like it's hard. She'd get a tourist visa, be laughed at, and get kicked out, and you can't overstay it, right? Like good luck overstaying a visa.
Genius. So, who gives you a right to say you go back to your country? This is our country as well.
Too many students here.
And like when you guys say there are a lot of Indians around, yes, the CEO of Google, Microsoft, you name it, Adobe, like we are. But when you see a lot of people in front of you, you get irritated, you get fatigued. What is this double standard? और अगर इतने इंडियंस दिख भी रहे हैं तो वो गेट क्रैश करके नहीं आए हैं. They have been given opportunity by the government. इसके लिए यहाँ पे इतनी population है. Because Canadian government allowed them to come to Canada. That's why you see a lot of Indians.
Okay, now I even have another thing after this. Canadian government allowed them to come to Canada. So be mad at them. Yes, we are mad at them. Okay? But there's a couple things to say. We want people to change their vote, so you have to point out the behavior to show them to change. If you just say, please don't let people in, with a low number of points, it won't mean anything. So you have to show them what the behavior is. Or else they're going to just say, I don't see the big deal. I'll just keep voting them in. And then another one is, unlike India, unlike almost anywhere else except for Western countries, we allow people from India, from wherever, to become politicians, and then they can affect the vote, right? So they get their own community to vote for them, and they vote in large numbers for that community, no matter what the other policies are. And then they get into the Canadian House of Commons in government and start lobbying hard for things like this. And they're part of the government saying, oh, well, you let them do it. Well, okay. So then we have to start pointing out, well, if that's the attitude, then we have to say, let's change the minds of Canadians to say, well, let's get a government, including who we're voting for, that wouldn't just let them in. So just the fact that you got let in, yeah, we're upset. Who got let in? Why? Not just Indians in general. I don't know how many times I have to say it. But anything low quality, we don't want in, right? So yeah, we want to change the government. We have to change the government by showing people the bad behavior of what's here so that other people are too naive, too kind, I guess, to like face reality.
Yes. So guys, मेरा point simple है. Like I don't think personally it's about hate. It is actually Indian fatigue. It's like a perception that has been shaped by few mistakes. So to my fellow Indians, it's a request to all the immigrants living abroad और जो Indians बाहर tourism पे भी जाते हैं, even your actions become stereotype. Because you are not just one person, you are representing millions of Indians. So respect the cultural norm of living in Canada because ये country में बहुत opportunity है. You came here to...
So I totally agree with her points here, right? She's telling people, hey, there's some reality or some reasonableness to people getting fatigued. So, step up your game. That's the right thing to say. Now, one last
have
thing
a better
coming up.
life. Don't abuse this beautiful opportunity to live in this beautiful country. Always remember, तुम 100 चीजें करो, उसमें से 99 चीजें तुमने अच्छी की और एक चीज तुमने गलत की, तो तुम्हारा वो एक ही चीज हमेशा इंसान याद रखेगा. And to all the other communities, yes, we Indians are everywhere, but we are contributing in every sectors as well. Next time, before you see any Indian or any immigrant, don't say go back to your country. Maybe just thank them for contributing into the Canada's GDP.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say either, but I'm not going to say don't go back to your country. That's for sure. But I am nice. I told stories of, like everywhere I go, if I see someone working hard, I talk to them. Hey, where are you from? How you like it here? And like get into friendly conversations. I think that's a good thing. I'm not into this go back to your country bit at all. I'm into promoting high-level immigration in reasonable numbers.
Because of few people, and not necessarily all of Indians, maybe the brown people, not all Indian are bad. Alright guys, so that was my honest opinion. I just wanted to burst it out because मेरे से ये सब देख के रहा नहीं जा रहा था. Let me know in comment, what do you think? Until then,
Actually, she said one more thing. I forget where it was. I might have skipped over it. That's really important. One sec.
right, we have the right as well. And I'm
Oh yeah,
not
this is it.
encouraging
Watch this. This is huge.
migrant. Some or the other time they migrated. The real Canadians are the First Nation, the indigenous people. Everybody else migrated. So if you guys have the right, we have the right as well. And I'm not encouraging people, those who have the PR and citizen.
See, that I talked about this in another video. That is a terrible mindset. Okay? What she is saying, and we have to get rid of this mindset. She's a nice person, but she's saying the Indigenous Canadians, like I've studied your history, the Indigenous Canadians are the real ones. You terrible white people took over, and you're not real Canadians. And then we came in here. So Indigenous, yeah, they're real. Everybody else who built that is not really a real Canadian, including Indians. So we're all in the same boat. We can all do anything we want. Well, I think white Westerners have done a good job. Some would say bad. It's not really anyone else's business, but we're dealing with our own Indigenous communities. I would say better than most countries. I would say we're just incredibly try to be generous. There's, there could be still bad things, whatever. But then we created a country. We didn't have to let anybody in, but we chose to. We chose to let people in from all over the world. And then they turn around and say, well, hey, guess what? You're not really real. You're the same level as us, so we can do whatever we want. I'm not encouraging it, but we can just jam in any cultural things we want. You can't say anything about it because you're, not, you don't have some extra benefit or some extra stake in what the culture is. Yeah, we do. Okay. And that's how it was for so long. Everybody came in small numbers, adapted to the Canadian way, added a little bit of their own culture to make it more diverse and rich, but it was still very Canadian. You ask anybody born from any race in like 1970, okay, 1980, ask any one of them. They grew up here. They're very, very Canadian in every way, but they have their own little cultural thing. It's not part of this mass immigration thing. And they're proud to be Canadian, whatever that means. And it like means a big mix of things. But it's not like anybody can come in, do whatever they want, and we don't have to have any control. And by the way, she would say, if I say, well, I'm Canadian, can I just show up to India and like migrate there, do whatever I want that Indians don't like? And what this mentality would say is, no, that's different because we're native to India. So we're like the Indigenous of Canada. So we get to go to Canada and do whatever we want, but you can't come to India because India is actually technically ours. So that is infuriating. Now, overall, I like her. She seems nice. She seems reasonable. I could have a reasonable conversation. She pointed out bad behavior in her culture and some in mine. And I've commented on all of it, I think, fairly. So again, I like her. I'm not attacking her. But I've just sort of added my perspective on top of this. This is not to be like it's me against her. No, I'm adding my perspective so that she wanted to have a conversation. I'm having a conversation and I'm adding, just a different and another layer of a perspective onto this. And I hope that helps people. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. Okay. So anyway, subscribe, like, share it, and we'll see you in the next one.